Now, for the past half century in our society, free enterprise and what it implies has been under unrelenting attack. Americans from all walks of life have demonstrated a deep and abiding, somebody's trying to get the door back there. Americans from all walks of life have demonstrated a deep and abiding contempt for private property rights and individual freedom. And I believe that free enterprise is threatened today not because of its failure, but because of its success, somewhat ironically. That is, capitalism has been so successful in eliminating the traditional problems of man, the historic problems of man, such as disease, pestilence, gross hunger, and poverty, that all other human problems appear to us to be at once inexcusable and unbearable. The desire by many Americans to eliminate these so-called unbearable and inexcusable problems has led us away from the basic ideals and principles upon which our nation was built. In the name of other ideals, such as equality of income, sex and race balance, orderly markets, consumer protection, energy conservation, just to name a few, we have abandoned many personal freedoms. The primary justification for the attack on private property and economic freedom, and privacy, I might add, can be found in people's desire for government to do good. That is, we all hear things like, government should care for the poor, government should help the elderly, government should help college students become educated, government should help failing businesses. Well, it's all well and good to say that government should do this, but we must recognize that government has no resources of its very own. And what I mean by that is that all these programs to help deserving college students or failing businesses, they don't represent congressmen and senators in Washington or legislators at your state capitol reaching in their pockets and sending the money out. That's what I mean when I say government has no resources of its very own. Moreover, there's no tooth fairy or Santa Claus giving them the resources. Now, so when you recognize that government has no resources of its very own, that forces you to recognize that the only way the government can give one American citizen $1 is to first, through intimidation, threats, and coercion, confiscate that $1 from some other American citizen. Now, some of you might say, well, gee, well, this terminology that Professor Williams is using, intimidation, threats, and coercion, is just too loose. Well, you have April 15th to check me out. That is, you can tell the agents of Congress, namely IRS, that you don't want your earnings going to bail out failing banks. You refuse to give your earnings to farmers. Give it to them so they can give it to farmers. You will see all the intimidation, threats, and coercion that you want to see. And if you act too ugly, you will get shot. Now, a lot of people say, well, wait until you get shot. Well, that's like, I tell the people in Washington, look, I'm not going to give you any money to give to the farmers. And they say, well, we're going to take your house. I say, no, you're not going to take my house because I bought that house. And then they come around and take my house, and I'm up at the window with guns. And they'll shoot me, they'll be armed. Now, government does those things, and many of us support government doing those things, for which, if a private person did them, he would be condemned as ordinary common thief. For example, I could see some homeless lady downtown Charlottesville or in downtown Washington, and I could walk up to Don Boudreaux with a gun in my hand. I could say, give me your $200. I'd take his $200. And then, having taking this $200, I could go downtown and buy that lady on the grate some housing, some medical care, some clothing. If you were members of a jury, would you find me guilty of a crime? I'm sure you would. You'd find me guilty of theft. Regardless of the disposition of Don's money, I'd nonetheless be guilty of theft. Now, I ask you, is there any conceptual distinction between that act and where the government comes up to me and says, Williams, you know that $200 you made last week that you had planned to buy some Lafite Rothschild Bordeaux wine or some Chateau de Chem Sauterne? You will not do that with it. You will give it to us and we will help the lady on the grate. We will give the money to the lady on the grate to buy her some housing. I assert that there is no conceptual distinction between those two acts. And if you press me, I would say that the only distinction is that the first act, where I walked up to Don and took his $200 to help the lady downtown, that is illegal theft. And the second act, where the IRS walked up to me and took my money or intimidated me, that would be legal theft. But nonetheless, theft all the same. Now, I know all of you are law students and you're somehow enamored with legality, but I'm not. That is, in a moral society, legality should not be our talisman. Because, indeed, many things in this world are legal but clearly immoral. Apartheid in South Africa was legal, but it was immoral. Slavery in the United States was legal. Did that make it moral? The Nazi persecution of Jews, the Stalinists and the Maoist purges, they were all legal. But they were clearly immoral. Now, so we want a just society, and I'm quite sure that all of you would say that you wanted a just society. We have to ask questions about morality. And the moral question I'm asking you to think about is, can one make a moral case for confiscating the property of one American and giving it to another American to whom it does not belong? That is the moral question. That is one moral question. Now, in a free society, we want transactions or relationships between people to be voluntary. And we want to minimize involuntary or coercive behavior. As a matter of fact, another interesting way I like to look at it, because a lot of people get hung up, they don't fully appreciate voluntary and involuntary exchange. I tell people, I love seduction, but I'm against rape. Now, what is seduction? What is the essence of seduction? Well, seduction is where it's a kind of transaction where we proposition our fellow man in the following way. We say, if you make me feel good, I'll make you feel good. That's seduction. I love seduction because both parties come out feeling better in their own opinion. And that would be an example of seduction would be where I walked up to my grocer with the $2 in my hand. I say, look, if you make me feel good, give me that gallon of milk. I'll make you feel good, give you $2. And we call that a positive sum game. Both of us are better off. Now, rape, on the other hand, is the kind of transaction where we proposition our fellow man in the following fashion. We say to him, if you don't make me feel good, I'm going to make you feel bad. Bad relief, those who like adverbs. Now that would be where I walked up to the grocer with a gun in my hand, and I say to him, unless you make me feel good, give me that gallon of milk, I'm going to make you feel badly, blow your brains out. And in involuntary exchange or rape, it is a zero-sum game. That is, in order for one person to be better off, of necessity, somebody else has to be worse off. Now, widespread private ownership and control over property is consistent with seduction and the minimization of rape. Widespread government ownership and or control over property is consistent with rape maximization. That is, government, all over the world, including our government, is the major source of organized rape. And you just think of many examples. One that especially touching me, back in 1959, I was driving a taxi cab in Philadelphia, and I was making $400 a month. I mean, you get in my cab, I could give you information to buy anything that you wanted at any time. I was getting well compensated for that. And I got a letter in the mail, and the letter essentially said, Williams, you'll stop making $400 a month and begin to make $68 a month. And normally people don't switch in that direction, so it requires some coercion or intimidation. The letter said, unless you make us feel good by being in our army, we're going to make you feel badly by putting you in jail. You can think of many cases of rape by the government. Now, I should add that despite the bigness and the alleged power, I say alleged power, of industrial giants like IBM, AT&T, Exxon, Chrysler, in a free market, what kind of power do they have over you and I? They don't have any power whatsoever. That is, ask ourselves, because there's a lot of demagoguery on college campuses where they say these corporations have a lot of power. But ask yourself now, for Exxon to get $1 out of me, what must happen? I must voluntarily get out of my chair, voluntarily get into my car, voluntarily drive down the street, and voluntarily drive up this man's lot and give him $1 for a gallon of gasoline. Now, that does not describe our relationship with government. Government will get money from us whether we want to give it to them or not. Now, but however, I would not be responsible if I didn't say that corporate giants like AT&T, Chrysler, and Exxon, they can get dollars from us whether we want to give it to them or not. But first they would have to go to Washington. They'd have to get permission to take money from us by the United States Congress and the Senate. Take Chrysler. When Lee Iacocca was having trouble some years ago, he has similar troubles now. Or take the farmers who are having trouble. Now, the farmers and Lee Iacocca, they know where I live. I live in Valley Forge. They could knock on my door. They could say, buddy, I'm having some trouble. Can you spare a dime? Can you help me out, Williams? Now, I'd probably tell Lee Iacocca or the farmers to go play in the traffic. And they kind of know that. And so what the farmers do, they will go to, say, Senator Dole. And the farmers will say to Senator Dole, if I ask Williams to voluntarily help me out, he's going to tell me to go play in the traffic. So could you use your agents to take his money? Now, so that's what I mean when I say that businesses can get dollars from us whether we want to give it to them or not, but they don't do it in a free market context. That is, they go and get the totalitarian or coercive powers of the Congress and the Senate.